Okay, so thank you everyone for joining this webinar. My name is Anthony Mancuso from Sonoma Partners, and today we're going to be presenting a full end-to-end solution of Dynamics 365, in particular around the project service automation module built within Dynamics. Gonna go through a couple slide decks real quick, but we won't spend too much time on there, so we can spend a majority of the time on the demo and taking some Q&A. But first, just quick introductions. Excuse me. My name is Anthony Mancuso again. I'm a sales engineer with Sonoma Partners. My job with the company is putting together some customized and configured demo environments that fit the needs of companies that have pain points in their current CRM solutions. With me as well, I don't believe he's in the conference just yet, but is Nick Costanzo, who's one of our principal consultants and specializes in project service. So when we get towards the question and answer towards the end of the webinar here, we'll go ahead and talk to him about that as well. But jumping right in, like I said, just a few slides to start with. What is project service automation? Everybody's heard it. Most people think maybe only a few people at the organization have their hands in project service. What this is it's an end-to-end solution, as you can see, built into Microsoft Dynamics 365. Emphasis on the built into and embedded into Microsoft Dynamics. In the past, projects were managed in some different solutions, and you managed your ERP in some other places, and then from a business development perspective, it was hard to get all the info from an opportunity you sold over to the project team or into the ERP system. So now with Project Service Automation module built directly into Dynamics 365, we're getting a single system, a single window view to have everything all the way from starting an opportunity to actually planning out a project, scheduling resources, and giving a full picture of the project service through, like I mentioned again, closing of the opportunity all the way through when we're actually deploying or implementing a project. As you can see on the chevrons on the bottom, we won't go through all of those, but that's what we're going to be looking at today within Dynamics 365. So starting with an opportunity, going into some project planning, resource management. We'll get an idea of how to track time and expenses, and then show how we can analyze all the data that we're getting on behalf of this project, and integrations with things like our ERP systems, whether that comes from Dynamics 365 or a third-party ERP that you might have. Okay. As I mentioned before, sometimes we run into folks to say, who uses project service outside of typically the people you see in the middle, the project manager and the resource manager. So just to open up the spectrum and explain who really has their hands in this project service, as we mentioned, it starts very early in the account manager space or the business development space, where we can now have sellers that are selling into opportunities for organizations and starting to manage the beginning of the project that we're going to be doing within that opportunity. We also have team members, engineers, consultants who have a play in project service, and end customers have the ability to access some of the information through things like portals that are also built into Dynamics 365. And at the very end of the day, your business leaders, sales leaders, operations executives have a 50,000-foot view of the business, which now that all of this is embedded within Dynamics 365 is going to give them that full scope of the state of the business from business development, project managing, financials, and then what have you. It goes on and on. Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the demonstration. Let me get this closed up here. And on my screen now, you should be seeing Dynamics 365 window. Excuse me. And what we're sitting on here is an opportunity that's built into Dynamics 365. For those who are not familiar with CRM or Dynamics 365, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're looking at and how we're navigating around. Very top, simple toolbar that has Dynamics 365. Gets us to all the different modules of what this application has to offer. So whether it's sales, as we're going to look at for a moment here, customer service, field service, project service. Typical to like on an iPhone when you're navigating around in your home screen and finding those different apps that solve for different problems. Dynamics 365 is built in that same way with these apps that'll get you in the places you need to be. Of course, for the demonstration today, we're going to be in Project Service, which you see I went ahead and clicked in this area here. It's kind of cut off, I believe, on your screen, which is okay. And we're going to be looking at the progress of an opportunity that goes and flows through the actual project and implementation. So as I mentioned, what we're sitting on now is an opportunity. And our company has an opportunity for implementing CRM, just as a use case and an example. And we're going to be doing that for this company called Grove Consulting. Now, typical business development, opportunity management, you have your things in here like the summary, the meat and bones of what we're looking to track. What's the customer's budget on us offering this CRM implementation? What's their time frames, the probability of us closing this? In the middle, we have our relationship pane where we can have that social collaboration between other people at the organization. If this is a selling opportunity where multiple people have their hands in working with different contacts or tackling different pieces of opportunities or projects, they can collaborate here. And we're also at the very core of what CRM is, and Dynamics is tracking things like activities and notes and making sure that we get a full spectrum of what's going on with this customer, what's going on with this opportunity. At the top, we introduced concept of a business process flow, and this is basically, for our company in particular that we're using for the demo, our recipe for success to say that if we follow these stages of this opportunity progress that we're making, we're more likely than not going to win this opportunity. Okay? So that's kind of a quick rundown of form, navigation, what we're looking at in Dynamics 365, but now we'll get into the meat and bones of what project service does within this. Now, typically in these sales scenarios, we're doing something like selling widgets for dollars. But of course, that's not always the case because within CRM, within Dynamics, you can sell services, you can sell resources. It spans as far as you need it to go, and we can configure the system to do whatever you need it to do on that front. Now, if I start scrolling down on this opportunity, start seeing things like the opportunity lines where, as I mentioned before, we have one area where we're doing widgets for dollars. We're selling, as we mentioned, this is a CRM implementation. We're selling a handful of licenses to CRM that you can see here. But we've also now, with project service embedded into Dynamics, have this new area for project-based line items. Of course, for implementing CRM, deploying, there's going to maybe be some development work. So you can see we have written in here development work. That's going to be billed as time and material back to our client, and here's the budget that they have set for that. Okay. As I continue to scroll down, this is where we could start looking at quotes and building out quotes and adjusting them and making sure that they fit the needs of the customer, but as well fit the needs of our customer to make sure, or our company, to make sure that we're making positive profit margins on behalf of these projects that we're proposing. What I'll do now is drop into one of these quotes, and if you didn't already have one built out, it's as simple as clicking the plus button in the upper right-hand corner to create a new quote and start working from there. Just for the sake of the demo and the short time we have, we've already got that created. But now that we open this up, you're going to see form looks pretty similar, but we're starting to see some different information. So at the top, as we mentioned before, we want to make sure that as we're working this opportunity, we want to make it profitable for our organization and still have the customer satisfied with what they're paying for the CRM implementation as well. So you can see, just based on the things that we put in on the page before, the line items of here's what we're looking for time and billing, here's the license cost. We know the budget for the customer. Grove Consulting had that budget we saw on the previous page. We can now easily do a quote analysis and say, now that we mix and match this stuff, if we add some things, take some things away, we can find out pretty simply just by a calculated field here what our gross margin is on behalf of this opportunity or project. And then we also have the ability, as we start building out the project, to see things like, are we within the customer expectations? Again, back to the concept of both of us satisfied, our high profit margins, the customer being happy with the expectations. And that includes things like the estimated schedule. Are we estimated to finish early or not based on what we've got here? And then are we estimated to finish within budget? All right. A couple other things to point out that are different here as well, and this mixes in with project service too, is if we look in this summary, that meat and bones we saw before, a little bit different now that we're on the quote, in that we've added some things around contracting units as well as price lists, as you can see here. So of course it's not necessarily always the case that all of our team, our bookable resources are going to be available in one contracting unit, meaning let's say we have a team here in the US, we've got another one in France, another one in the UK, you can actually start identifying the contracting unit who's going to be tackling this portion of the project or this portion of this opportunity. And within there as well, there's relative price lists too. So we can have price lists for maybe top tier clients that maybe get a lower cost rate from us than normal. We could have an entry level price list, and you can be creative with however that looks. Okay. Now as we continue to scroll down, we're going to start seeing some things being built out in terms of profitability analysis and that customer expectations that we saw above. Again, the quote analysis that we saw at the very top of this page. Now, how we've built out this quote, we're actually saying that based on what we've quoted out, it looks like the project contract that we're going to get from Grove Consulting is going to be around almost $200,000, but our cost is going to be $48,000. Again, pretty high profit margin. Maybe not always realistic to be that high, but just case for the demo here. And then we could see our associated revenue as well. Where you see blank here, this is the revenue that we plan on getting from the licenses. And then we have the different roles revenue as well, which is going to be that project-based work that we identified on that opportunity page. So we continue to scroll down. Again, comparison to the customer expectations. We have an estimated completion date, which in turn is telling us that we're estimated to finish early. And we also have what we've quoted next to the customer budget. So we get nice little embedded charts that sit on the form here to tell us where we are within the progress of staying on budget and ahead of schedule in terms of this project. Okay. Now that we've gone through this, we're in the early stages of this opportunity. We might get this quote out to Grove Consulting and they say, okay, looks like it's good for us, fits within our expectations, it's going to be done on time. What you would naturally do is hit close as one on this quote, which would close win that opportunity. And in turn there, what that's going to do is automatically create a project for us now that we've got those project-based line items that we saw before. Now to get there, you can do a couple different things. Again, I've already got this pre-built for the demonstration, so I just have an easy way to get there. But we can click this magnifying glass to search for that project that was created on behalf of this quote. Or if we hit the button to the right of it, it's what we call recently viewed items. And within here, you could pin records that you most often use. For the sake of the demo, I've got pinned here a couple different areas that we'll be using just to navigate through this pretty quickly. But now you see here we have this Grove Consulting CRM project. So this is the crossing point or the transition point where we move from opportunity, quotes, and pricing, and we actually start getting into the project planning and estimation. So best part of all this being under one roof is that all the information that you've collected when you were managing that opportunity is going to go ahead and translate into this project automatically without anybody at the organization having to go in and retype, rekey any of the information to get it over into another system, because again, now we're all under one roof with Dynamics 365. A couple things that you're going to see here, we still have that concept of a business process flow, but now it's a little bit different because we're going into the project planning. You can see that's the area that we're in here. And as we continue to build this out, you're going to see areas that start getting built out in each one of these tabs. So our summary says things, just the name of the project we're working, the customer we're doing it for, as we saw before, the contracting unit. But you see we also have the ability to start adding things like calendar templates and project templates. Project templates in particular is a good thing to point out because let's say, like Sonoma Partners, we are a CRM-only consulting firm. You might have a template to say every time that we get a CRM implementation project, we want to follow this template of resources we need, tasks we need to complete, and phases that we have traditionally done that throughout. And you'll see where that comes in when we look into work breakdown structure in just a moment here. Those estimates were brought over as well, so estimating when we're going to start, finish, how many hours, and what kind of costs we're going to incur from this. And as it starts getting built out, you'll start building out your sales team. You're going to start pulling team members in, as you can see below, by their role, the name, when we're going to need them from. And then you constantly have this status update below as well. Things like what progress percentage are we at in terms of completing this project, and how much of the cost have we consumed? And through there, you're getting some quick analytics to say, based on that, kind of what we see here, our scheduled performance, we're a little bit behind schedule, but we definitely are under budget, which gives this project an overall status of yellow. And if we go down even further here, again, as we're going to start building out this project, this is where this becomes more relevant. When we start pulling out different bookable resources based on their role, we're going to see things like how much effort did we put into it, how many actual hours did they spend, which is in turn going to give us these robust analytics right on this project form. But of course, to even get there in the first place, we need to start looking at what kind of people we need to staff on this project to make it successful. At the very top in our navigation, right next to Grove Consulting CRM project, we have this little drop-down arrow that'll bring us into an area for work breakdown structure, WBS. So those in the project world have probably seen this before, worked with it, configured things within there. Now this is fully baked out and built into Project Service within Dynamics 365. So what are we looking here? We have our business process flow at the top that stays with us through that project. So whoever's working on the project at this state and time, they know that where they need to be, what they need to be doing. Now, what I'm going to do, I just scaled this down to a month so we could see our Gantt chart a little bit clearer on the right-hand side. But what are we looking at? We've got on our left-hand side, based on the template that we've selected, as we mentioned earlier, this is a CRM deployment. Based on that template, we've got different phases that are built out. Looks like we've got about 4 or 5. And within each one of those, with the template, we know that we've got specific tasks that need to be done, and we know how many hours that typically takes. So you can see just by that template, we've brought this in, it's built this Gantt chart out for us, and based on the estimated start date and end date, it's actually already starting to give us dates in which that needs to be completed as well. The way that that's done is by saying something like, if we don't want to start working on our estimates task until we've completed the project proposal, you can go over here and actually create dependencies on behalf of these as well. When I hover over the hours that we're going to be putting into our project planning task for proposal, I have a little dot that shows up at the end. If I click and drag that and move it down to the next task that we have for estimates, this is basically telling our structure, our project team that, hey, this task of going into estimates cannot be completed until we actually do the project proposal itself. So this is all very configurable point and click where you can move around hours, you can move around dates, create those dependencies as we just saw before. Now in here too, these are pretty stock based on the template we selected, but we also have the ability to add a task directly to this work breakdown structure. So if we decide based on Grove Consulting, they have a need to do a project, or maybe more a robust project planning process, we could start adding those tasks here. We can identify the resource, the billable resource internally we need to put on that task and how much time that we're going to need them for. Okay. What this will also do in this work breakdown structure is, if we go over to the right, allow us to create a pretty general project team, generate this project team that says, based on who we know is available and what kind of positions and for the hours that you need them for, Project Service can actually start picking people or roles for each one of these different areas and take a lot of the guesswork out of having to go one by one to try to figure out what person or what role we're going to put on each one of these individual tasks. Okay. Other thing we want to look at too is, as we're starting to manage all this, we started the project, we've got our template for the tasks that we need completed and the phased approach. We want to go back and start looking at our estimates, and just by going to that drop down arrow at the top, if I click project estimates, we go into a new area that starts giving us more information that's continuously being built up. Now here is where we're looking at things like our time phase by sales. So very similar to what we saw before, here's the role that we're going to need and the task we're going to need them for. Since we're looking at this chart of time phase by sales, it's automatically telling us that on this given date, maybe this week, or you can adjust it by month or year, we plan to get these kind of sales out of those resources for that task. And of course, through this same estimates, you might want to look at what kind of effort it's going to take, as well as with that effort, what kind of costs that we're going to incur from that as well. So we can easily take this time phase by dropdown where it says sales, and we can drop into something like cost. So those same resources that we have with those tasks, how much is it going to cost us internally as an organization? And then what kind of effort in terms of hours are we going to put into that? So that's really nice and convenient to have that all in one area where you can navigate between the three different spaces of your all-up offered effort, cost, and sales. But we also have a nice view in the toolbar where we hit Show Grid View that'll take all three of those things together. And it'll say, here's a list of everything. Here's your task that you have. We're billing it as time. Here's your estimated start and end date. We have the quantity or the effort that we saw in hours previously, right next to the unit cost, right next to the sales price. In turn, taking that and saying, here is just a quick little column that says your total cost price as an organization versus the total sales price that we're offering out to Growth Consultant from when we started early on in the quote and opportunity process. And as you can see, with our cost being at $80,000 and our sales price being at $120,000, we're making pretty good profit margins there. So you can continue to develop and tweak this to make sure that it's exactly where we need that to be in terms of our margins that we're trying to hit as an organization. Okay? So again, just an all-up view of effort, cost, and sales on this one window. Now, we've got our work breakdown structure completed. We've got the project started. At this point, we actually need to start going in and assigning our specific bookable resources to these tasks that we have. As I mentioned before, we could have hit that Generate Project Team button, which would usually pull some generic roles in, sometimes some roles by names, depending on the time they have available. But the other way to do that is actually going into what we call a schedule board built into Project Service. So if I use the drop-down at the top menu here, I have on my right-hand side Schedule Board. Now, what Schedule Board is this gives us a view into our entire organization of these billable or bookable resources that we have at our disposal to use for projects like we're working on now. Now, as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got some pretty robust ways to filter what we're looking at. I set by default just that one of the characteristics or the proficiency roles that I want to have available in this view to me is I want my people to be proficient in CRM. Let's say we're a CRM consulting firm. That is a no-brainer. Our resources need to be proficient in CRM. But you can also start breaking this up into things like roles. So you can see if I use the drop-down here, which you can configure to whatever your organization roles are. You can break it up into territories, organizational units, as we mentioned earlier. If we were picking up resources out of the UK, Switzerland, just our global organizational unit, you can organize that there too. On the right-hand side, we're seeing those same resources that meet those filters we've identified on the left, and we're basically seeing what their utilization looks like for the next couple months that fit the same time frame as when we need our project completed. Okay? Now let's say we're looking for a functional consultant who needs to handle a handful of tasks for that project, the Growth Consulting project. I'm going to use the drop-down on the left-hand side under Roles to hit Functional Consultant. We're going to search for that. You'll see that list of 25 resources has now gone down to about 5. Just to show you as well what you can also do, let's say, okay, we have 5 resources who are proficient functional consultants in this space, but it looks like they're pretty booked up. As you can see on the right, if our utilization is 40 hours a week for some of these billable resources and some are already overbooked, we may need to scale down a little bit and see who else can still take care of the job even if they're not necessarily listed as proficient in CRM. So I can take this characteristic out. We'll go back into CRM, and here's where you see not only can you now just pick out those characteristics, you can also identify their skill base, their skill set within that certain characteristic, whether that be familiar, good, or proficient. You'll see again we have 5 resources right now that are proficient in CRM. If I switch that over just to good, that list is now going to generate 14 different resources that fit our characteristics and our filters on the left-hand side. Now I'm going to go back to proficient in CRM, and we're going to take a look at who we have available. Maybe Growth Consulting is a big company of ours. We really want to put our best on the job. And again, as we mentioned earlier, we can see some are almost fully booked for their week, some are overbooked, but we do have a couple of resources on the right-hand side who look like they could have some time, and we think they'd be a good fit based on the criteria to dedicate some time into this project. So here we have Mary Ann, for instance, who's at about a 44% utilization, still pretty low. And when I hover over her now, I can even see things like her skills that she's identified. So she's proficient in CRM, still has some experience in ERP. Maybe that's important for us in this project, accounting and finance, and so on and so forth. One thing to mention in here as well is with the integration in whole to Dynamics 365 and Office 365, we also have the ability to make phone calls, send quick chat messages via Skype, or send an email via Outlook directly from this Dynamics 365 project service module. So we'll go ahead and look. It looks like Winifred already has some available time as well, and he seems to be pretty proficient in quite a few areas. So it's a give or take. I mean, both of them can probably take some of these hours that we need for this project. But now if I use this drop down to the left of their name, I can actually see the projects that they are currently staffed on. Looks like Mary Ann, for one, has 2 projects that she's basically juggling throughout the next couple months that she's working on. If I do the same for Winifred, it looks like he just has 1 project that he's working on, maybe through, looks like the end of January, beginning of March. So based on his the less amount of projects that he has that he's working on, and still the availability that we need here, we might want to book Winifred as our functional consultant for this project. Now I can go in and let's say we'll take the areas that he is not already totally booked up for the week. I can click on each one of those individual areas, which will give us, let's say, 12, 24, too early for math, can't do it now, but we're going to get a good amount of time out of him through early March. And now just by selecting those areas, I can click this book button at the top. When I click book now, this is saying we want you to go ahead and choose the project that you'd like Winifred to be staffed on. For our demonstration, we said that this one would be Grove Consulting CRM. So we have our resource in Winifred. We also have the ability to start adjusting things like his booking status. So if we wanted to make sure that Winifred was a hard book on this, that nobody could adjust his schedule, it's not questionable, we definitely need him for this, we could do a hard booking status schedule on him to dedicate to our Grove project in particular. You could also propose one to him in which he could accept or approve, or you can do a soft booking and basically say if you do need him for another project that ends up being more important, I might have the flexibility to open up, if we went back to CRM with the proficiency of just familiar, we have some other resources we could work with. Now within this booking status as well, you're presented with new options for booking methods. So basically what we can do is first say we want to take Winifred's full capacity. If his utilization that we want to have him at is 40 hours a week, then by choosing full capacity, it's going to take whatever he has left out of those weeks that we've chosen and book him for that. We could also do remaining capacity, which is similar to what we just mentioned before. It'll fill up those extra, 28 hours that he has to put in for each one of those weeks to reach his utilization. We can do percentage as well, or we could even specify the hours to say if we only need Winifred for 40 hours, adjust the hours on the right-hand side, when we also want to just make sure that of those 40 hours, he gets them done quicker than he has to, instead of spreading it out over all these weeks that we've first assigned for him. So we could even switch the allocation type to say front load him those 40 hours. So if I look back here, all the areas that we have with the lines that we've selected with the 12 hours for each week, we can front load those hours there and then free him up later on if he completes them, or we can distribute them evenly through the weeks that we've selected. Okay. So now we've created our project, we've built our work breakdown structure, we've found some needs and started actually booking out some resources. Now at this point, project is, let's say, in progress. We've got our resources going out there and they're working on this project on site. And through these billable resources, of course, we want to have the ability to make sure that they're able to quickly and easily track their time and expenses, because that's essentially in turn going to get charged back to Grove Consulting in the invoice that we pull up at the end. A couple ways to do that. We like to bring up the mobile device for this. So I'm going to mirror an iPhone that you should see in just a moment. And what we're looking at here is the Dynamics 365 mobile app. And within this mobile app, you can see just a quick navigation tour, that top toolbar with the hamburger button that you see here. In there, we have access on this app to everything Dynamics 365, a list of our accounts, contacts, opportunities, work orders, time off requests, and as you can see at the bottom in the orange areas, a space for time entries and expenses. So let's say Winifred is now out in the field, he's working with Grove Consulting as the functional consultant, he's starting to put his hours in. He can go now to this mobile application and click time entries, and he's already got some in there. And by hitting the ellipses you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we can simply now just hit the plus button for adding a new time entry. We can go in, we could select the date that he worked, the duration that he spent on it, and then you see that there's also areas to associate that directly back to the project. So you could choose the Grove Consulting project through here, the individual tasks that he's working on, the role that he played, and then any relevant descriptions that he has. So that's one way to start tracking his time entry through the mobile application. And in here too, once he has one that's created, you can see I've already got one here for Wednesday. We've put an hour into CRM. We can click that time entry, and in the bottom right-hand corner, again through the ellipses, have the option to go in and actually submit this to our approver, somebody who's going to go in and confirm that we did work that time, or when we'll see in a minute that we did actually spend what we did on some expense reimbursements that we're putting into. Okay. One other thing I do like to show here too, and taking a step back from the story, but Sonoma Partners, aside from just being a CRM consulting firm, we also do have a mobile development practice. And we found a while ago that sometimes it was quicker just to have an application that you popped into just to do your time entry in particular, as opposed to navigating the application, the native application, which we still think is great. But also have the ability to do something like through this application here, TimeBuddy, give those billable resources a way to say you don't necessarily have to go into the full-blown Dynamics 365 application if all you want to do is track your time. So the app that we've built here is pretty similar in the sense that now you just open it up. If we click on one of these line items, we're identifying the project, the task we're working on, whether it was billable or not, the time that we spent there. But one of the cool features of this is making it easier for those billable resources to track this. All they have to do is on the left-hand side of that line item, hit this start button once they filled out all the information in the middle, which will almost do like a stopwatch. So you can start your task that you're working on, put that into our TimeBuddy application here, hit start and stop. Once that's finished, you can review and send that directly to your approver from here. Another cool feature with this as well is that if you're tracking some of the tasks that you're working on within this project in Outlook, you could import those tasks from Outlook that will show up as a line item here to easily give that billable resource a way to jump in and make sure that they're getting all things tracked even from Outlook, whether they put it in the application or not. Okay. The other thing we'll pull up here, so now we've tracked time, and with these projects in particular, we're typically seeing that that expenses are being incurred as well on behalf of that consultant that we have. Maybe they have to be on site for this, maybe they're charging for mileage. Similar view, but I just want to show you on a different device. I'm going to open up mirroring on an iPad just so you can see it on both mobile devices. And just as we saw before, hamburger button at the top toolbar, you click that, here's access to everything Dynamics 365, including expenses that we see right under time entries where we were at before. Now here, oh whoops, jumped over to time. Back to expenses now. Here you can see some that we've already started tracking. We've got a flight out to Grove for that CRM deployment. We had the lunch with the client. We did a happy hour with them. We're maybe working on charging some mileage here. But now we also have the ability, through the ellipses in the bottom right-hand corner, I know it's a little grayed out, to click that. We can hit new in the bottom right-hand corner. And now we're creating an expense similar to what we've created with that time entry, where we choose the date, the amount that we've spent on it. If there's expense categories or different buckets that you're putting these billables into, you can choose that here too. Now in here, if I'm drop into one of these expenses, I'm going to pull open this mileage expense that Winifred has in for that drive to the PSA seminar he did. I can click that. Here we have all the information that was originally inputted. We have the expense information in general, but we also have the added feature of hitting the ellipses again in the corner. And if you see the second option from the right, the option to add a receipt for that. So what that looks like is, now I can take this, hit that receipt button, and we'll hit the plus button here. We can title it, say receipt, or if I hit that camera button now, we could even take the camera live on your device, take a photo of that receipt, and then input that directly into that expense so that whoever's verifying that on the back end has the ability now to verify that that money was actually spent. And through there as well, before I shut off the iPad, there's the same way to go in and submit for that expense. Once you've done your entire expense report, you can go in and push that out to somebody who's going to confirm that. And then all those approvals are either done on the mobile device or within Project Service on our web browser as well. You'll see if I just use the drop-down for Project Service, left-hand side under the Project Service module, we have Project Approvals, where somebody can come in and go do that. Okay. So now we've had folks working on the project, they've tracked some time and expenses, and we might be ready at this point to start invoicing out to the customer, to Grove Consulting. Now I'm going to go back into our recently viewed records, and in here I have a couple things. I have a contract that was built out directly from the time when we created that quote and we said, yes, the customer has approved this quote. So it generates a contract. And if we go into that contract, it's going to be pretty empty now because we haven't tracked too much against it just yet. But you'll see it has all the relevant information, so no rekeying anything. Our project-based line items, what we sold them in terms of products, as well as it's going to give you a periodical contract performance. Again, this will be empty because we haven't tracked too much against this yet. You'll be able to see charts here that show what has been our effort spent, and what's the billing progress? If they're on an invoice schedule, how far are we in terms of billing against this project and those individual tasks and the phases that go along with them? And then through there, you'll see that at the top toolbar, once this is all said and done, we have a simple button just to create an invoice. And that invoice is what you'd expect it to be. We'll jump over into what that looks like, where it's breaking it up into project-based line items, the products, giving a detailed amount description with tax and what have you at the bottom. Now in the past this was typically done and can still be done in sometimes like a third-party ERP solution, but just to validate as well, with the new Dynamics 365 platform, we're now bringing in operations into the mix, which includes Dynamics ERP solutions. So again, back to the concept of now this all being under one roof. Okay. And through there, if we are doing integrations where that gets pulled in, earlier we saw where estimates were being tracked. If I go back into our project service module, under billing, I have an area for actuals. I'll click that just to show you what that looks like. Those are those time entries that are being approved. Those are the expenses that are being approved. Any billed sales, approved hours, unbilled sales, all are going to be in this actuals area. And this is what in turn is being charged back to Grove Consulting in that invoice that we previously saw. Okay. Now we've gone through this project, we've billed the client, deployment is finished. At this point, of course, you'd probably want to get a 50,000-foot view of now all the analytics that we've gathered on behalf of that. Of course, much easier now that we've got project service, we've got an ERP solution, and we've got customer relationship management, all sitting under this Dynamics 365 platform. Because now you can see by when I just click on the project service button at the top, I'm introduced to a project management dashboard, which some of those practice leaders that we saw earlier in the presentation, the slideshow deck, might want to see. Things like what's our gross margin for each month, or the cost that we've incurred. or our total sales by month, things like our role utilization, where are they at in terms of what the target utilization is that we've set up for them. And then if you've been in CRM before or you've played with these charts, you probably know as well that you can drill down into this data as far as that data will let you go. So I can say something like, here we have our total sales by month chart. If I click on October 2016, which was a pretty strong month for us, can now drill down even further to say something like, what customers or clients did we get most of this revenue from? If I click the arrow to move forward, it's now going to break that up into where that revenue came from in that month. If I hit the home button at the bottom left-hand corner, it'll bring us back to our original view. I could drill down even further in different ways. If we take that same month and I want to see which one of our roles in particular produced most of the revenue and sales that we saw in October, you could do that, and you could even change the chart type here. Do this, and we see that our functional consultants came up with almost $150,000 revenue just in that month alone. And when I mentioned you could drill down as far as that data will let you go, I could even click this and say, okay, of those functional consultants, which projects did they spend most of their time from, or where did we get revenue from the consultants in regards to the project that they worked on? Click on project. Maybe a pie chart looks good for this. We'll advance that forward. And now you can see there's all those individual projects. Looks like we got the most out of this functional consultant during the closeout boutique project we did. Another one might be an equipment store. So you can see how that data lets us drill down. And of course, that practice manager as well, what they want to go in and do is make sure that all of these billable resources that they have available to them are being utilized to the full capacity. If I go back into our project service module for the last time here and go under resources, we have an area for resource utilization. When I click that, this is going to bring up a pretty cool view for us where on the left-hand side, we still have the ability to filter down on seeing utilization rates for our billable resources. But on the right-hand side now, as opposed to when we saw before on that schedule board what time they have available in the future, we're now seeing all the historical data here. And if we hover over any one of these resources, it'll give us the same view we saw, same collaboration tools between messaging or emailing, see their skills, but we also see their target utilization and their cost rate. So if their target utilization is 75% and they've reached 75% based on where we've booked them on these projects, they're going to show up as green. On the contrary, it looks like if we look at Diana down here, she had a couple weeks that she got close, just below the target, so they labeled as yellow. And then, of course, any red area you see is below that utilization target. Okay. So, get this minimized here. We'll jump back to our deck. And with the last few minutes here, what we want to do is open it up to any questions that anybody may have. I know we covered quite a bit of content there, but let me make sure I get everybody unmuted. And you should be able to ask questions there. Alright, should be unmuted now. I just got everybody should be unmuted there. Any questions that popped up during the presentation? Any questions that popped up during the presentation? Oh, looks like we're getting a little feedback. Yeah. Really? Getting a little feedback. Really? Getting a little feedback. All right. So that said, if there is no questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up the demonstration a couple minutes early. As you can see on the final slide here, here's some more information about Sonoma Partners. A couple different ways to access us, just via the website is the best way. We've also got email, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. As I mentioned earlier, the presentation is being recorded, so hopes are we are going to get this up on our YouTube page for those who couldn't attend, could hopefully go back and review the material that we went over today. And that said, I'd like to thank everybody for joining and listening. We do have a field service presentation tomorrow if that's something you're interested in, similar to the format that we did today. If you'd like, reach out to us. We can get you an invitation out for that, and we continue or plan on continuing to do these webinars to give more information about new features in the Dynamics 365 stack moving forward. Thank you.